It was about the age of 20 when I had the NDE, and it was triggered by the stove. I was still living with my parents, and the kitchen was on the first floor, and my bedroom was just above that. And my bed was literally above the stove. Now, what was happening is there was a gas leak from the stove. In the morning, my mother must have got up early, turned on the stove, and there was a fire. But the fire was not the concern. That went out rather quickly. And the smoke really wasn't either. What was happening was the gas was rising up into my room, and I was breathing it in all night. So in the morning, now I hear the fire trucks are outside and all the commotion, police cars and everything. And I try to get out of bed. And what I find is that most of my body is paralyzed. I cannot move, including my face. Like I could not yell for help. So I was really scared, and I was trying to get to the edge of the bed. And as I was trying to pull myself, I would pass out again. So by the third time, I thought to myself, if I don't get to the edge of this bed, I'm dead. That's it. I know it. I know by the way I'm feeling, I'm gone. And I got to the edge of the bed and I pulled myself out, and I guess I fell out. This is the last thing I remember. And just before I hit the ground, I'm out of my body. I never actually felt myself hit the ground because now I'm above myself and I'm looking down on my lifeless body. And the thump alerted everyone downstairs. Oh my God, Ray's upstairs, right? So I guess they put the fire out rather quickly, and they were like, well, okay, everything is fine, but everybody forgot about the gas that was going up all night long. So my father ran up first, and he had scooped me up, and I'm looking at him, and he's holding me, and he's crying, and he's yelling for the paramedics. And, we didn't have a great relationship. So that kind of that touched me, and that's going to play a role in here in just a moment. I mean, how do you explain this energetic light that is everything euphoric? There's not enough adjectives for me to describe the euphoria, the pleasantness, the lightness, the just overall amazing feeling of being a part of that light. Everything one has ever said it is and more. There is no pain. There is no negative emotions. There's just beauty in this light. So you want to go into the light. And there's a being at the end of the light that's telling me it's okay, Ray, you can come into the light. It's safe to come into the light. I don't know who that is. And so I start to go into the light. And as I go in, the euphoria increases. And now I'm really kind of digging this now, right? But I see my father, and I see him just crying. And I always wanted that relationship. I wanted that emotion with him, right? So I more or less asked if I could. I said, I can't leave him like that. Can I go back? And the next thing I knew, when I woke up, I was no longer in that room. I was in the living room. I was on the floor, and the paramedics were working on me and with all their tools and equipment. And I'm going, did anybody see the light? Did anybody hear the voice? Did anybody see the light? And the guys are looking at me like, I think this guy's on drugs. And I'm like, I better shut my mouth before they bring me to the loony bin instead of the regular hospital, So I just kept my mouth shut, didn't say anything to anybody, let that go. In a couple of years, what started to build thereafter when I crossed over and came back was that there were now energies and beings that I can explain it better now because I understand it better. But then I just thought that the houses I was living in were haunted. I was chalking it up to things like that. I was like, I don't know, this is kind of strange, these things that are happening. And mind you, I'm an atheist, right? So I'm like yelling at these things like, I don't believe in you. So why don't you just get out of here and go bother somebody else? I'm 22 years old. I got my own apartment now. I'm living on my own, and I'm thinking it's going to be all parties and girls and whatnot. And all it is when I walk in, it's like my apartment is filled with people. And what it is energy, and you can feel their energy, and you see the lines crossing across the room. And you can feel a change of temperature and they can mess with everything electrical, right? So I would come home and I would accuse my roommate of doing this or that. Did you leave this on or that on? And I wasn't even there for a week. My roommate actually moved out, and he was staying with his girlfriend. No one was living there. I must have called my maintenance guy 150 times. And he's like, Ray, you're nuts. There's nothing wrong with your alarm. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with that. He goes, you're crazy. And I started to think I was. So I'm like, I'm here. I am on the cusp of, am I out of my mind, or was this real? Right? I'm not sold on the whole NDE thing. I'm thinking to myself, well, I inhaled enough gas fumes to hallucinate, and I fell in front of a window on a sunny day. Maybe that was the white light, and I could explain this away and remain an atheist. Things were easier that way. But then as life went on and progressed, these strange events kept happening. And because I came from a place of chaos, I would always put myself in dangerous situations to up the ante. I was self-sabotaging myself. That was my programming, right? From when I was a child. So now I'm in my 20s and I don't fear death, and I start to put myself in these very bad situations. And I managed to get out of them, not because I'm smart, but because someone tells me how to get out every time. One time I'm in a bar and I'm working for, people that I should not be working for, let's just say, on the wrong side of the law. And there's a shootout in this place. I duck under the bar, and the voice says, go out the side door, go out the side door. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if I go out the side door, this whoever's shooting is going to see me. But I do it nonetheless. And I run down the corridor and I get out the other side. There's a side door and then a side door I had to go to. I got out, and I parked my car there. I worked there 7 years. I never parked my car there in my entire life. That day I did. And I got the hell out of there. And there's been so many additional times like that, because I would continue to up the ante, put myself in bad situations, and always have this guide that would help me out, help me get out. And it was just the strangest thing. So the more I would push back, the more they kind of like wanted to help, wanted to be there for me. And it was this push-pull relationship that I always had with the afterlife. And it wouldn't be until many, many years later that I would be in full acceptance of this. And I started to use a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol because I couldn't sleep anymore. They would not let me sleep. I mean, they would just keep, chit-chattering all the way. And you don't hear with your ears, you don't see with your eyes. That's not really how it works. It's more telepathic. It's in here. It's like a video screen opens up, and it's like I'm watching a movie and I see the same thing over and over and over. So many, many years goes by. Like I said, the only way I could sleep was to use enough alcohol to probably kill the average person. And eventually I get married. I have 2 kids. I realize these kids, these 2 beautiful human beings that I have, are dependent upon me staying alive. So that's when I decide to change everything about myself. I go back to school, I go to rehab, and I work my way up the corporate ladder, and I do very well. And I keep these things, whatever they are. We have like a mutual respect for each other. I don't let anybody else know they're there, so they don't think I'm crazy. And, they don't harass me too much. And this works out well. As I continue many, many years later, I got divorced, I think, of my 3rd year of marriage. It wasn't very long. We were married and divorced very quickly. But the children were always like, I willed them into this world. I wanted 2 kids. I wanted these boys. They're my boys, I always stayed on the path and never deviated. I've been sober since they were like 3 or 4 years old. There's been no deviation. But I didn't date for a very long time. And it wasn't until I'm probably now in my 40s, and I say, all right, let me take a shot at dating. What the hell, right? I'll go onto one of these websites and I'll see somebody or whatever. And I'm perusing these sites, and I find this woman that I'm attracted to, and not only am I attracted to, I'm instantly like, and this is my wife. This is, I just know this. How I know this, I have no idea. I just know. And so I joined the site and I send her an email, and I said, I'm only sending one email. It's only to you. And that's because you're my wife. And I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but if you don't email me back, then, whatever. So she finds this amusing, thank God. And she does email me back, and we've been together ever since. But here's the funny part now. Well, it wasn't really funny at the time. When she comes into my life, so does this man, okay, who is not with us, who will not leave me alone. Okay, this is not one of the guys that I can push off and say, I'm not helping you. I don't know what you are. You don't know me. I don't know you. Stay out of my life. This guy was front and center all the time, right in my movie screen, and he would not leave. And he said the same thing over and over and over. I effed up. I made a mistake. You can help her. I cannot. I have no idea who this man is. No idea. So this starts on a Friday. I've only been dating her for a few weeks, maybe 6 weeks tops. I love her. I do not want her to lose her. She is by trade. You can't make this stuff up. She is a doctor of psychology and neuropsychology. Okay. And I'm about to tell this woman, I'm debating whether or not, do I tell her I see dead people? It's not going to go over well. She's going to run for the hills. But I'm at a point where I can't function anymore because this guy will not leave me alone. So I'm like, well, you know what? I may lose the girl, but I'll get the help I need, because obviously I need help. I'm crazy. I'm losing it. I have got to get help. I'm still in denial. I don't know what a medium is. I don't want to believe in any of this stuff. I don't want this to be real. I just want to live a normal life, right? It's been hard enough just to get to where I was. So I explained to her what's happening, and I'm expecting her to just be like, okay, go see this person, and, I'll see you never. But that's not what she does at all. She actually says to me, she goes, well, it's probably my dad, because I've seen many mediums and he comes through very, very strong. You're probably a medium. And I said, what the hell's a medium? And she goes, you don't know what a medium is? She goes, okay, let me explain. And she goes to explain what a medium is to me. And I'm like, that's crazy. I said, I'm just nuts. It was an easier explanation. Right. And she goes, wait, she goes, tell me about the man. What did he look like? What did he say? And I said, wait a minute. First of all, I saw the picture of your father in the house. It does not look like your father at all. Okay. And she said, well, wait a minute now. She goes, that was 20 years ago, long, long time ago. He was much thinner. He was shaved. I said, because this guy was stocky, he had a mustache, he had a thick black head of hair. And she shows me a photo of the guy. And I said, you know that man? And she goes, that's my father, silly. And I go, and I was speechless. I didn't know what to do at that point. And she did. Thank God. I mean, she was just like a guiding light through this whole thing. She said, let me take you to a medium. There's one that's going to be in town. She's very reputable. Everybody knows her, speaks very highly of her. I've seen her before. She's spoken to my father. I'll bring you to her, and you can just explain what happens, and you guys can just kind of compare notes. And that's what we did. So we sat there, and I just told her how I see things, how I get the vibrations. Sometimes I get the chills. Sometimes they're high vibrations. Sometimes they're low, and I just go through the whole process of how it happens. And then the window opens up, or the movie screen, whatever you want to call it. And she says, stop. She goes, that's exactly the way I see it. And it was like a big relief, but at the same time, now what? What am I supposed to do with this thing, right? Like, what responsibilities do I have? So I'm relieved, but I'm not relieved at the same time. It was almost like a kind of a lose-lose going into it, right? Either I'm crazy, or now I got people that other people can't see, and they're not going to believe me anyway. So I came out of there feeling pretty good. We had a couple of laughs, You know, we always through my entire life, I would know things and I don't know how I know them, but I would just like spit them out at the dinner table or at Thanksgiving. And somebody would say, how do you know that? You know, and I was kidding around with her. I said, what's the one question you hate most in life? And she goes, and we both said it together. We go, how do you know that? She goes, I hate that damn question. I've been asked that my whole life. And I said, don't you just get the answer sometimes? You have no idea where the hell it comes from. She goes, I don't know. I don't know how I know anything. I said, me too. And then after that, she was my mentor for a while. She took me under her wing, thank God, because she taught me a lot about you know, how to handle it a little, you know, and how to navigate it. And then the irony, here's the irony. It's a year later, and there was a man, the original guy who was a medium that my wife had seen that brought her father through, drew a picture of him. And he was the man. He's responsible for a lot of he's the teacher of the mediums. Like he's like the guy. Okay. Everybody, if you've seen the person on TV, he's probably been trained by this guy. This guy himself, he doesn't go on TV. Doesn't do that. So this is the guy that originally saw my father-in-law and spoke to my wife long before I ever met her, drew the picture, and we were away from my birthday weekend. And she took out the picture. She just happened to, she goes, I found this and I wanted to show it to you. And she shows me the picture and I said, that's exactly the way I saw your dad. That's exactly the way I see him. Because I still saw him at that time. I was like, that's how I see him. Because he had this shirt that was very distinct. And I'll never forget it because it's like a shirt that you would wear during the era that he was alive. It was a popular type of shirt. And he drew that. And so I said, who is this guy? And we looked him up on the internet and his website came up and it said, we are now taking applicants for a 2-year mentorship with Joe. The deadline to apply is February 15th. That's my birthday. She says, are you going to apply? I said, are you kidding me? I said, if this is not divine intervention, I don't know what is. So I apply. But he never gets back to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm not real. I'm not a medium. Why did I even apply to this anyway? And he just kept sending, like, he needed more information and more information, these long questions. I mean, I had to jump through so many hurdles. I never had so much of a hard time giving anybody my money in my entire life. And I emailed his assistant and she says, well, there's, you know, hundreds of applicants. And I was like, oh, okay. So I understand. And I just, you know, left it be. And he could have taken all these people on as students and made a lot of money because this was like in the thousands of dollars we're talking. And he took 11 of us and I was one of the 11. You had to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that you're the real deal or you're not getting into this class. And instead, like, talk about integrity. This man turned down how much money? That's unbelievable to me. To take the 11 people that he was sure about into his class. And that man brought me to new levels and new heights. But after all was said and done, you know, I love him and I thank him for everything. And I'm still with him, you know, from time to time, but I can't practice mediumship because I just found happiness. I just had my spiritual awakening. And when I do that, I take on their emotions and it really is painful and it stays with me for hours and I can't do it. I just realized how to remain happy in my own life. It took me meeting her because I really feel that one has to experience all emotions on the spectrum in order to become awakened. And I don't mean enlightened. I'm just saying awakened. In order to get to that next level of consciousness, you have to experience it. And for me, I was missing love. There was no love in my life. It wasn't, except for me and my kids. That was it. So meeting her filled that gap and gave me the missing part. And from there, my life began to change. And I was still mentoring with Joe and I was learning so much from this man, but at the same time, it wasn't just mediumship that I was learning. And I went back to school for metaphysics. I got multiple degrees in metaphysics. And what I also studied was Einstein, Niels Bohr, Tesla, and I started to find the science behind the spiritual technique, if you will. And I started to put them together. And I showed this to her, and she says, "This will make a great book. You gotta start putting this stuff together, and people will love this," because I'm my biggest skeptic. So when I decided that I was not going to practice mediumship, I decided that I was going to figure out how to show other people how they can be happy with even the worst things that could potentially happen in a life, because I've had them all. I've literally had them all. And I stand here before you thankful and grateful for every one of them, because it made me the man that I am right now. And my life is half over, and I got maybe, or I don't know, I'm in my 50s, so I'm about halfway there. And I've got this half to look forward to and be happy. I don't get angry anymore. I don't get sad. I've lost my negative emotions. They're not there. And my anger was the biggest thing that was my go-to for everything, because that was all I saw growing up. And I hit a plateau where I just started to fracture my ego, so much so that when something transpired that normally I would have lost it, nothing happened but peace and calm. And I remember it. You can't forget a moment like this. I was driving, and I had my car. I was driving a car that I saved a lot of money to buy. I thought that was a big deal at the time, to have an expensive car. So I'm driving my car, and it's snowing, and I don't see this deer, and the deer runs right into the car and just completely wrecks the car. I call it my deer moment. Normally, Ray would have gotten out of the car yelling and screaming and ranting and raving, and who knows what he would have done, right? Because he's the angry guy. But it didn't happen. I did not get angry at all. I stepped out of the car. I felt bad for the deer. And I tried to see if I could help the deer. And the deer got up and walked away. Like it was amazing. And I wasn't injured either. Like I took a look at the car. The car was like, my God, looked like it was hit by a truck. And I was like, it's just a car. So I pulled it over to the side of the road, and I started to dial my wife. We didn't live together yet at that time, and I was actually going to my other house, and she wasn't yet my wife, obviously. And I said, what am I calling her for? What am I going to ruin her night? That doesn't make any sense. Nothing happened. I just lost my car. That's all. That's the only thing that happened. Insurance is going to buy me a new one. No one's hurt. There's no reason to dump this on anybody to make myself feel better. That's not right. So I managed to drive the car home, and I didn't even take it home. I got it to a body shop, and I put it there, and I Ubered home. And the next morning, my son woke up before I did. He said, Dad, somebody stole your car. Somebody stole your car. I said, nobody stole my car. Relax. I had an accident. He goes, why didn't you tell me you had an accident? What, you got to call me if you have an accident. I said, no, I don't. I said, because this is how you're going to react if I tell you I have an accident. And he's like, who are you? He said, what happened? Who are you? And what have you done with my dad? So from that moment, that whole feeling, that rush of adrenaline that I don't mean you, but that I would normally have gotten, does not exist anymore. It's just not there, because I'm grateful for the bad moments, and I'm grateful for the good moments, and I'll find the good in the bad moments. That's a whole new way of living for me.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, Ray. You mentioned spiritual awakening. How did spiritual awakening manifested in your life?
It started by me learning more and more about the ego and how much it controls our lives. I'm sure you're familiar with the different aspects of the brain, or I should say the mind. Let's separate the mind and the brain. We have the unconscious, right, where all of our emotions are stored, and our bodily functions. And then we have the subconscious, where all of our memories are stored. And then we have the egoic mind, which likes to go right into that subconscious mind and take out the past experiences and feed it to our conscious mind and say, do this. And what happens is, when that cycle happens, what you're actually doing is you're living in the past. because you're doing the same things you did yesterday. You're taking advice from this voice inside your head that is not real, that's going to your subconscious, taking what you did yesterday and telling you to do it again today. Okay. So it can never, until you break that, you don't get better. You don't make changes, right? So you have to look to a higher level of your mind to break free of that. And that higher level, Eckhart Tolle would refer to as your awareness. It's at the very top of your consciousness. And he calls it the awareness because we are one of the few creatures that are aware that we're having a thought, or we're aware that we're having an emotion. So if you're aware you're having something, guess what? You can change it. You don't have to have a certain emotion. Nothing has to make you sad. Nothing has to make you angry. Nobody can ever make you sad or angry. That's your choice. I don't care what they do to you. Nobody can make you anything. That's completely up to you. So when you accept that, and that it's your choice, and you walk out into the world and you say, you know what? You're yelling at me, but I'm not going to get angry. So you have a nice day, and you just forget about it. I almost ran a stop sign, and the guy started just screaming at me. I mean, it was like getting out of the car, and he's like, "You mother, blah, 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 blah." And I just started laughing. And I was like, I used to be just like you. Now he's going to drive off, and he's going to let me ruin his day. Maybe the next 2 days. He's going to be complaining. He's going to tell his wife what happened. He's going to go to work. He's going to tell everybody at work what happened, what an idiot I am. Are you kidding? I'm not even going to think about you in 4 seconds. But you're going to ruin 2 days of your life? And if you're trying to manifest things, and you're trying to stay in a resonant frequency so that you can manifest things, and you let something as little as me pull you out of that because I overran a stop sign by a couple of inches, you'll never get what you want out of life.
Okay, let me come back a little bit to your NDE. You said that you were looking, you've seen yourself, you've seen your father. You've seen yourself from above?
I was in the corner of the room. So the room was a square. The bed, how can I explain? The room is a square room with the door. I was right adjacent to the door in that corner. For some reason, I don't know why I was in that corner. But I'm close to the ceiling, and the light is coming from the other corner, and it's only shining on me. It's on an angle, and it's only on me. I can see what's happening in the room. The light is looking at me. The being at the end of the light is talking to me, telling me it's okay to enter the light. As I begin to enter, I feel better and better. And let me tell you, when you come back, the pain, the physical pain, remember, when you cross your energy now, you have no physical body at all. So all those little aches and pains, like the little things that we don't notice anymore because we hurt our finger like 10 years ago and we just ignore the pain, that all comes back. And it hits you all at one time. And you're like, oh my God, it's like a bomb went off inside your body. I recently went to the IONS conference in Washington, D.C., where I spoke, and I was talking to other people that had NDEs, and we were comparing notes, and everybody was like, oh my God, doesn't coming back suck? And I was like, oh, it's the most painful thing because all of a sudden now your back hurts, your neck hurts, your this hurts, your that hurts. And you're like, oh my God, I should have just stayed in the light.
How far did you get to go into the light? How far
I
you
did not
traveled?
go very far.
Not far, okay.
I did not go far. There's people that much farther than me who have told me what's on the other side. They've seen more, they've done more. I've only had that feeling, that beautiful feeling, that euphoric feeling, just enough to know that I don't need to be afraid of this ever.
So you probably had an out-of-body experience, not an NDE.
I've had out-of-body experiences as well.
Okay. So now you're talking about this entity that you've seen talking to you. It was the same entity talking to you throughout your life, or they were different? They were guides, or they were...
Excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it was always the same, but it often could have been. See, I can't tell you if it's a male or a female. I cannot, because I don't think that entity had a male or a female aspect to it. that at that level, we're talking about guides or spirit guides. They don't have physical bodies anymore. I don't see them as such. I see them as a ball of energy. Okay. That's another realm. When we first cross, you can show me your physicality, right? I can see your face if you want it, you show it to me. I can see your clothes if you want to show it to me. But at the next level up, when you're what I believe, some call it the fifth realm because supposedly this is the third, what everybody else says. At that level, I can't see a face anymore. So I don't know, male, female.
So it's a ball of light that is talking to you telepathically, and you feel the love coming from that.
Oh, yes.
Am I expressing myself right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The first time it saved me, I nearly drowned. I was a child, and I swam out too far in the ocean, and the undertow was taking me out farther and farther to sea. And I was going under, and I was waving to shore, and the lifeguard's looking one way, and my father's I don't know what the hell he's doing. He's like not paying attention, and I'm going down, and there's this being again that all of a sudden I just got calm, just like the deer moment. I got calm, and it said, swim sideways, swim on an angle to shore. I didn't know to do that. I was like 10 years old, and I just did it. Take as long as you need, relax, and swim on an angle. And I did that, and I wound up all the way down. I don't know how far, but I got to the shore, and I somehow lived through that moment.
I want to ask you about intuition. How does intuition manifest in your life? How do you feel it? Like you said, you felt that that lady that you saw in the picture was with your wife. You knew that right away. Can you give me more example of intuition? How do you feel it in your heart? Talking about myself, for example, sometimes I have a question. I have a dilemma question. I don't know what's going to happen. And suddenly I see the answer. I can see, but it's very, very subtle. Just flash before my eyes. This is going to be. And I go, let's say I have a meeting, I have an appointment, I got to go. And exactly it happens the way I see it. But you got to catch that little moment when it flashes and acknowledge it and believe in it and say, okay, this is it. This is what I saw already that it happened.
That's exactly
right. How it
right.
manifests for you?
Extremely similar. You have to note the feeling, the vibration that you get at that moment when you're receiving the correct information. And the only way to do that is trial and error. So what I tell people is everybody has that intuition that you can utilize, right? You just have to start to figure out how yours operates, how it works. So take notes, write down, this happened. I felt this thing, give it a name, write it down, and then go back to it and see if it really took place. If it didn't, that's wrong. Okay. That's not the feeling you're looking for. If it did, that's the correct feeling. Circle that one. Now see if it happens again. And then keep notes and keep track of those things. You're saying now you've got it. You know what it feels like. And when you capture it, you're like, I know what's going to happen at that meeting.
And that's important because you have to be in the right vibrational state, like you said, the right vibration to see that and acknowledge it and act on it. Because there is too much happening in your head. You're not going to eat too much information. You're not going to acknowledge the one hunch that you need to see. You don't see it because it's too much stuff happening. When did you start sharing this NDE experience? When did you get out of this?
I mentioned it at home, and my mother was in complete denial and said it didn't happen. She said it didn't happen until she read the book at the age of 82. And then she told me not only did I die once, but it was 4 times. And she was in the police car as the ambulance kept pulling over to resuscitate me again and again. And, that was kind of a big moment for me, a big moment of validation, but that was recently. I had brought it up a few times, not often. One time I brought it up with some friends, and what happened was everybody at the table decided they had an NDE. And, I have a trick question that I ask people to see if you had an NDE. When you wake up, were you all wet? What do you mean? Well, if you didn't piss your pants, you didn't have an NDE because you didn't die. Because that's the first thing you do when you die. So you can call them out very, very quickly. And so I said, I'm not going to bother bringing this up because 10 other people at this table did not have an NDE. Everybody, so it's either denial or it's everyone else wants to have one too.
When you decided to write the book, get out and make this public, did you feel that information for your books has been transported to you? I mean,
Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Oh, now I know where you're going. Yes, I didn't write half that book.
Okay, so somebody was writing it for you through you. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I wrote about this much, and then
That's
they
what I
wrote the
meant.
rest. Absolutely. Yes,
So basically,
yes,
you open
totally.
the channel, you are in the right vibrational state, and the channel is opened, and the information goes through you on the paper.
That
That's
happens with a
what.
lot of creatives.
Yeah, a lot of them, and the musicians, and the scientists. This is how it happens.
Yeah, I was getting things that they were coming in fast, and there's something I do before I put anything in a book, right? So the first thing is I have to be aware of whatever the technique is, that it exists, and I have to be able to replicate it. The second thing I have to do is I have to find some sort of plausible scientific theory behind it that satisfies me enough to put it into the book. And then I have to replicate it one last time to make sure I'm convinced. I am my own biggest skeptic. I will put myself through the hoops that I have to go through before I'm going to put my neck out there and say, this is real, or that is real, or this is real, or that is real.
Did you hear any voice talking to you in your head when you were writing it? How that manifested? How this writing, I would say, channeling through you, the book, manifested for you?
Very rarely do I hear. That's not one of my big things, although there's one little child that often I hear her. She's one of the very rare ones that I hear. Some I see. Most of that type of information where something is just kind of implanted is more of a sensation and a knowing. There's not a person, I don't know who's delivering it or where it's coming from. I just say, I align myself with my awareness and I am on that frequency. I don't look to my subconscious. I look up at my awareness, which is connected to my higher self, which is connected to the universal collective. We're all a part of it. And once you tap into there, it's like the internet on steroids. I mean, that you can ask anything and get any information. It's all there. So once you're tapped in and you get in that zone, that information just flows through you. And I can't type fast enough. And I'll take notes and I'll write and I'll talk to my phone so I don't forget. My wife sees me do it all the time. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't want to forget that for later. I want to look it up, make sure that's real." And that's how the book is made.
Yeah, you probably heard about Neil Donald Walsh, right? Conversations with God.
Neil
Donald Walsh.
I've heard of the book.
He was in his 50s when he started writing the book. He was so depressed, he was almost suicidal. He was crazy. It's an interesting story. He was homeless and basically just kind of trying to survive, living in a tent and somewhere on the West Coast. And then I heard this voice. One day he was so desperate, and he heard the voice say, "Hey." Basically, he was asking the questions. He was depressing. He was asking the questions. He started writing down, and he wrote his first book, Conversations with God. Then he wrote the second Conversation. He's got like over 30 books right now, and he's almost 80 years old. So basically, he's been always just been a channel for these books. I understand that. So how does clairvoyance manifest in your life?
Okay, that is seeing, obviously, right? So clairvoyance is when you're using your sight. I am very, very visual. So seeing things was one of the first things that came easy for me. When I met with Bonnie, the first medium that I met with, and we talked about mediumship, we also talked about clairvoyance. And I can remember one time in particular, we were in the house, right? And I don't remember what the reason was. My wife got a bed. Oh, she heard something, I think. And she said, "Can you check on the kids?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I was laying in the bed and I closed my eyes and I said, she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm checking on the kids." And she says, "No, you got to go check on the kids." And I said, "I can see them." And she says, "No, you can't." And I said, "Yes, I can." And she said, well, okay, I'm going to go down there. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not going to say their names. This one is sleeping sideways, and this one is sleeping this way, and this one has this color covers on, and this one has that one, and she has a pillow over her head. And she goes down the hall, and she comes back, and she goes, that's really weird.
Look, Ray, you can
now. If I wasn't that close to them, I don't know that I couldn't do that with you because we just met. But I can do that with our children.
They have a connection. But you can save on
right,
cameras around. You can save money on cameras around your house. You don't need the IP cameras. You can see what's happening.
Right. One time I did jump out of bed, and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" She goes, "What is it?" And I said, "Well, that was actually, that was a real thing. There's somebody outside, and it was just somebody walking their dog. Yeah. But I can actually tell the difference whether or not it's a nothing or it might be something.
You mentioned here being a medium. Do you practice mediumship? Do you have to do some sessions for people now?
Only in class. I will not do it. I did it a couple of times. I'll share with you one story. A friend came to the house and told us that her friend's husband killed himself in front of their child. She was distraught, angry, furious. Why would you do that in front of the child? She came to me and she said, is there any way, you could ask that question? And I said, I don't really know. I said, I could try. I said, do you have a picture of the people we're talking about? And she gave me pictures. And I said, I'll come back. I'll go upstairs. I'll lay down. I'll tell you what I get. And I'll come back. I watched this event over and over and over. It was very, very difficult to watch. And I came down and I told her what happened. And I said, the man did not want the child to be there. He said, go out and get the bike. And he was giving the child his bike. I don't know the details. I just know that he said, go out and get the bike. I know that there was a firearm, a gun that was under the cushion. He's left-handed. He took it out with his left hand. I'm relaying this information. So the kid, what happens is he doesn't go get all the way to the bike. He comes running back in the house. But the intent of the father was not for the child to be there at the time. The kid was supposed to take the bike and go. Mm-hmm. Didn't happen. So I explained this to the friend. She takes it to her friend, and her friend goes berserk. Absolutely not. That's not it. I know he's a scumbag and blah 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 and da da da. And then I said, okay, she took that back. I said, I'm wrong. I could be wrong. That's fine. And I went to my mentor and I said to him, I said, when you're right about something, and you just because you watched it over and over. And he says, yeah. And I told him the situation. And he said, look, he goes, she needs to be angry with him right now to forgive him, to get over what's happened. So if she needs to believe it that way, you need to leave that alone. And what's the first rule I told you? Never read for a friend of a friend. And I was like, you're right. I messed up. She was meant to believe that for her own, for her own good. And I interfered. The truth was not the best thing for her. And I have no right doing it.
Okay, Ray, let me ask you this about your work. If people want to contact you, know more about you, about your work, about your books, if you can mention that in a podcast.
Yeah, sure. There's two ways to get in touch with me. There's raycatania.com or limitlesspublications.com. I do one-on-one coaching with folks. They can find out more about that there. You can find out more about the books, find out what I'm doing next. Get in touch with me. Anything that's going on, it will be on one of those two websites, Limitless Publications or raycatania.com.
Also, I have a question about freedom, the name of my show. What's your definition of freedom?
Definition of freedom. It's what I just felt for the first time over the last couple of years. I don't have that heavy weight of you have to be a certain way or act a certain way or react, I should say, not act but react. I'm free from reacting, and I can now be active and be who I want to be and choose what I want to feel and choose what I want to do. And that freedom, that there's a weight off me, that I'm free of that ego that once ruled my life for 50 years, causing pain and anguish, and it's gone.
So your spiritual awakening happened recently, like in the last couple of years, 2-3 years ago. Yeah. And you jumped right in and started writing the books. Yeah. Well, that happens. Yeah. Everybody gets awakened in its own time, in its own way. Some people meditating, go in the cave. Some people fasting. Some are just doing a lot of yoga. But some people just kind of awaken during the lifetime, I would say, in their 50s and 60s. And, well, this is it. If you have a message for our listeners.
Well, like the book's title, You're Still Alive, Now Act Like It. It's basically about living every single day as though it's the last, enjoying this precious life that we're given. One day it will end, and enjoy it and do everything that you want to do right now. And, tell everybody that you love, I love you every single day, because you just don't know if that's going to be the last time you see them when you walk out the door. Life is that delicate, but also know that it doesn't really end. We just transform.
Yeah.
So take that and just utilize it, be well, and enjoy this life and enjoy the next.
I read some just a couple of days ago, I think on Instagram, it says that imagine that you are dead, that you died already, but you have a choice.
That's
You
easy.
have another little bit of choice to live a little longer. How are you going to live that? I don't know if I phrased it right, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, imagine that you
Yes, I
already
do.
died. You're not here anymore.
Yeah.
How are you going to live the rest of your life with this perspective?
That is okay. I actually go into that in the second book near the end. This is a very, very important thing. Changing your perception of how you see death. Because if you talk to people who are on hospice, who know that they're going to die, okay, their perspective on life completely changes. They do not have worries. They do not have cares. They're not trying to beat their whatever their disease is anymore. They've given in. They know how much time they have left, and they're going to live for that time period. And they do whatever it is that they choose that they want to do to make someone else happy or to make themselves happy or whatever it is that they need to be fulfilled before they leave this earth. And that's the way we should live too, because we're all dying. We're dying right now. You know what I mean? We all should live that way every single day. Because, at the end of the day, nothing is that serious. Nothing is that big of a deal that you have to, ruin a day or 2 days or a week or 3 weeks or anything, and certainly not your life over.
Well, thank you very much, Ray, being a guest on About Freedom Show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here today.
Thank you for watching About Freedom Show. I really appreciate you. Click on one of the videos below and don't forget to subscribe.